The evening sun painted the sky orange as people gathered at the community park for the annual talent show. Marcus Chen, a successful music producer from Los Angeles, stood backstage, adjusting his tie. He had been invited as a guest judge for this charity event in Atlanta. The stage was decorated with colorful lights, and vendors sold snacks around the area. Families sat on blankets, children ran around playing, and everyone seemed excited about the performances ahead. Marcus checked his watch. The show would start in 30 minutes. He had judged many competitions before, but something felt different about tonight. Maybe it was the warm community atmosphere, or perhaps the fact that all proceeds would go to local homeless shelters. He walked around the venue, observing the excited participants warming up their voices and practicing their dance moves. Near the food stalls, a young girl caught his attention. She looked about 14 years old, wearing worn-out clothes that had seen better days. Her hair was uncombed, and her shoes had holes in them. She stood at a distance, watching the food vendor serve hot meals to customers. The smell of fried chicken and fresh bread filled the air. The girl's eyes followed every plate that passed by, and Marcus noticed her swallow hard, her thin frame revealing that she hadn't eaten in a while. The girl slowly approached the food stall. Her hands trembled slightly as she got closer. The vendor, a large woman named Betty, who had been serving food at community events for 20 years, noticed her immediately. Betty had seen many hungry children in her time, and her heart always went out to them. The girl stood there silently for a moment, gathering courage. "Can I help you, sweetie?" Betty asked kindly, though she could already tell the girl had no money. The girl looked down at her feet, embarrassed. Other customers in line began to notice her, and some whispered among themselves. The girl felt their stares and almost turned away, but hunger kept her feet planted on the ground. I don't have any money," the girl finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I'm really hungry. I haven't eaten since yesterday morning." Betty's expression softened. She had a policy of never turning away hungry children. But before she could respond, one of the event organizers, a stern-looking man named Mr. Patterson, walked over. "Young lady, this is a business. If you don't have money, you need to move along." "You're holding up the line," he said firmly. The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. She had learned long ago that crying didn't fill empty stomachs. She nodded and started to walk away. Her shoulders slumped in defeat. But then, something inside her sparked. She remembered her grandmother's voice from years ago, before she passed away, telling her that she had a gift. "Your voice is special, child. Don't ever forget that." The girl stopped walking and turned around. She looked at the stage where performers were getting ready, then back at Mr. Patterson and Betty. "Wait," she called out, her voice stronger now. People turned to look at her. Marcus, who had been watching the entire scene from a short distance, moved closer. The girl walked back to the food stall, this time with more confidence in her steps. She looked directly at Mr. Patterson. "If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" she asked clearly. The question hung in the air. Some people in the crowd gasped, others murmured among themselves. Mr. Patterson looked surprised, unsure how to respond. Betty smiled, impressed by the girl's courage. Marcus found himself walking even closer, intrigued by this brave young soul. "What did you say?" Mr. Patterson asked, thinking he had misheard. The girl stood taller, despite her worn appearance. She repeated her question, louder this time so everyone nearby could hear. "If I sing well, will you give me a plate of food?" "I can sing. My grandmother said, I have a gift. I just need a chance." The crowd that had gathered grew larger. Some people looked sympathetic, others skeptical. A few teenagers laughed, thinking it was a joke. How could this homeless girl possibly sing well enough to earn a meal? Mr. Patterson looked uncomfortable with all the attention the situation was drawing. He glanced at Betty, who gave him a meaningful look that said, "Give her a chance." Marcus stepped forward before Mr. Patterson could respond. "I'll tell you what," he said, his voice calm and authoritative. "I'm one of the judges tonight. If you can sing, really sing, I'll personally make sure you get not just one plate, but a full meal." "Deal." The girl's eyes widened. She looked at this well-dressed man who spoke with kindness in his voice and nodded eagerly. But, Marcus continued, you'll have to perform on that stage, in front of everyone. Are you brave enough for that? The girl looked at the big stage with its bright lights and microphone. She had never performed in front of a crowd before. She had only sung in abandoned buildings where she sometimes slept, or quietly to herself while walking the streets. Fear crept into her heart, but hunger and desperation pushed it away. Yes, she said firmly. I can do it. When can I sing? Mr. Patterson tried to protest, saying she wasn't registered and didn't have a parent's permission, but Marcus raised his hand. Let's not make this complicated. She asked for a chance, and I'm giving it to her. We can fit her in during the break between acts. Betty clapped her hands together, excited to see what would happen. Word spread quickly through the crowd about the street girl who would perform for a plate of food. Some people thought it was exploitative, others saw it as an opportunity for her. As the show began, with the first registered performers, the girl sat on the ground near the stage, her stomach growling, her heart pounding with nervous energy. She had no idea that this moment would change her life forever. The first few performers took the stage with varying degrees of talent. There was a dance group from a local school, a young boy who played the violin, and a woman who performed a spoken word piece about community unity. The audience applauded politely for each act. Marcus sat at the judges' table, taking notes and offering encouraging feedback. But his mind kept wandering to the girl sitting on the ground near the stage entrance. During a brief intermission, Marcus walked over to where she sat. Up close, he could see dirt under her fingernails and small cuts on her arms. Her clothes, though dirty, had once been decent quality. Someone had cared for her once. What's your name? He asked gently, sitting down on the ground beside her. The girl looked surprised that this important man would sit on the ground with her. Jasmine, she replied quietly. Jasmine Williams. Marcus smiled warmly. That's a beautiful name. Tell me, Jasmine, how long have you been living on the streets? Jasmine hesitated, unused to adults, asking her questions with genuine interest. Most people either ignored her or shooed her away like a stray dog. About 2 years, she finally answered. Since my grandmother died. I was 12 then. Marcus felt a pang in his chest. 2 years on the streets at such a young age. He wanted to know more, but didn't want to push her before her performance. And you really think you can sing? He asked instead. Jasmine's eyes lit up for the first time. My grandmother used to say, I sang like an angel. She was a singer too, back in her day. She performed in church choirs and local events. She taught me everything she knew. Jasmine's voice became animated as she spoke about her grandmother. She said music was in our blood, passed down through generations. Even when we had nothing else, we had our voices. Marcus nodded, understanding completely. He came from a similar background, though he had been luckier with circumstances. What will you sing for us tonight? He asked. Jasmine thought for a moment. A song my grandmother taught me. It's an old gospel song called His Eye is on the Sparrow. Do you know it? Marcus did know it. It was a powerful song about faith and hope during difficult times. If Jasmine could deliver it well, it would move the audience deeply. But it was also a challenging song that required real vocal control and emotional depth. That's a bold choice, he said honestly. It's not an easy song. Are you sure? Jasmine nodded with determination. I'm sure. That song got me through the hardest nights. When I was cold and scared, I would sing it to myself. It reminded me that I wasn't alone, that I mattered. Marcus felt his throat tightened with emotion. This girl had been through so much, yet she still had hope. He stood up and offered her his hand. Then let's get you ready. Come with me. He led Jasmine backstage where the other performers were preparing. Some of them stared at her appearance, whispering behind their hands. Jasmine noticed but kept her head high. Marcus found a bottle of water and gave it to her. Drink this slowly. It'll help your throat. Betty, the food vendor, had been watching everything unfold. She couldn't perform her duties anymore without knowing what would happen with this brave girl. She closed her stall temporarily and made her way backstage, carrying a small towel and some wet wipes. "Here, baby," she said to Jasmine. "Let's clean up your face and hands a little. You'll feel more confident." Jasmine accepted the kindness gratefully. As Betty gently wiped her face, Jasmine felt tears threatening again. It had been so long since anyone had shown her maternal care. Betty hummed softly while she worked, and Jasmine found herself relaxing slightly. "You're going to be wonderful," Betty whispered. "I can feel it in my bones." Mr. Patterson approached Marcus with a concerned expression. "Are you sure about this? What if she can't really sing? We'll have wasted everyone's time, and she'll be humiliated. Plus, we have liability issues. What if something goes wrong?" Marcus turned to face him, his expression serious. "Sometimes, people need a chance more than they need protection from failure. If she fails, she fails. But if we don't let her try, she'll never know what she's capable of. Besides, I have a feeling about this one." Mr. Patterson sighed, but nodded. He had learned to trust Marcus's instincts over the years. They had discovered several talented artists through unconventional circumstances. The intermission ended, and the audience settled back into their seats. The host, a cheerful woman named Sandra, took the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special unscheduled performance tonight. Please welcome to the stage a young lady who has something beautiful to share with us. Let's give her a warm round of applause." The applause was polite but lukewarm. Most people didn't know what to expect. As Jasmine walked onto the stage, gasps rippled through the crowd. Her appearance shocked many who hadn't witnessed the earlier scene at the food stall. The bright stage lights seemed harsh against her worn clothing. She looked so small and vulnerable, standing there alone. Jasmine walked slowly to the microphone stand. Her legs felt like jelly, and for a moment, she thought she might faint. The crowd seemed enormous from up here. Hundreds of faces stared at her, some with pity, others with curiosity, and a few with judgment. She gripped the microphone stand to steady herself. The sound technician asked what song she would sing, and in what key. Jasmine told him, and he quickly found an appropriate backing track. Marcus sat forward in his judge's chair, hands clasped together, silently rooting for her. Betty stood at the side of the stage, her hands pressed together in prayer. Even the skeptical teenagers who had laughed earlier were quiet now, waiting to see what would happen. The music began with a soft piano introduction. Jasmine closed her eyes and took a deep breath. In her mind, she was back in her grandmother's small apartment, singing while her grandmother cooked dinner. She remembered the warmth, the love, and the safety she once felt. When she opened her eyes and began to sing, something magical happened. Her voice, clear and powerful, filled the entire park. The opening notes of His Eye is on the Sparrow soared into the evening air with a purity that stopped everyone in their tracks. People who had been talking fell silent. Children who had been running around stopped to listen. Even the vendors paused their work. Jasmine's voice carried years of pain, hope, struggle, and resilience in every note. Jasmine sang with her entire soul. Every word carried the weight of her experiences living on the streets. When she reached the chorus, her voice swelled with emotion, and tears began streaming down her face. But she didn't stop singing. If anything, the tears made her performance more authentic and moving. The audience sat completely still, transfixed by what they were witnessing. Marcus felt chills running down his spine. In his 20 years as a music producer, he had heard thousands of singers, many with technical training and perfect pitch. But raw talent combined with genuine emotion was rare. Jasmine had both. She wasn't just singing words. She was telling her story, sharing her pain, and offering her hope to everyone listening. This was the kind of performance that couldn't be taught in any music school. As Jasmine approached the final verse, her voice grew stronger instead of tired. She hit notes that seemed impossible for someone her age, someone without formal training. The song built to its emotional climax, and Jasmine delivered it with such passion that people in the audience began crying too. Mothers held their children closer. Fathers wiped their eyes discreetly. Even the cynical teenagers sat with their mouths open in amazement. When the final note faded into the evening air, there was a moment of absolute silence. Jasmine stood at the microphone, breathing hard, tears still on her cheeks, unsure of what would happen next. Had she done well enough to earn her plate of food? Then, like thunder after lightning, the entire park erupted in applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering. Some were whistling, others shouting praise. Betty was crying openly, her hands raised in celebration. The other performers backstage were applauding too, their competitive spirits forgotten in the face of something truly special. Mr. Patterson stood there, shaking his head in disbelief, a smile spreading across his previously stern face. Marcus was on his feet before he even realized he had stood up. He was clapping so hard his hands hurt, and he didn't care. He had just witnessed something extraordinary. The other two judges beside him were equally moved, both wiping tears from their eyes while applauding. The standing ovation continued for several minutes, and Jasmine, overwhelmed by the response, could only stand there crying and smiling simultaneously. Sandra, the host, rushed back onto the stage with tears in her eyes. She hugged Jasmine tightly, and the microphone picked up her whispered words. "That was absolutely beautiful, sweetheart. Absolutely beautiful." When she pulled back, Sandra addressed the still applauding crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I think we just witnessed something very special tonight." The crowd's response grew even louder. Marcus made his way to the stage, unable to wait for the formal judging segment. He climbed the steps and walked straight to Jasmine. Looking into her tear-filled eyes, he said loudly enough for the nearby microphone to catch, "Young lady, you've just earned much more than a plate of food." The audience cheered again. Betty was already rushing back to her food stall, determined to prepare the best meal she possibly could for this incredible girl. But Marcus had bigger plans forming in his mind. He had connections throughout the music industry, and he knew several people who would be interested in nurturing this kind of raw talent. Before he could say more, audience members began approaching the stage. Some offered money, others wanted to know Jasmine's story. A local news reporter who had been covering the event rushed forward with her camera crew. Sensing a powerful human interest story, the event organizers had to manage the crowd, asking people to return to their seats so the show could continue. Backstage, Jasmine sat on a folding chair, still processing what had just happened. Betty arrived with a heaping plate of fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, collard greens, cornbread, and sweet potato pie. "Here you go, baby. Eat up. You earned this, and so much more." Jasmine looked at the plate, the most food she had seen in months, and fresh tears came. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, while people continued to stop by to congratulate her. Some of the other performers, who had initially judged her appearance, now approached with genuine admiration. A young woman who had performed a dance routine earlier said, "You have an amazing gift. I hope you get the chance to share it with the world." Marcus returned backstage after managing the crowd's excitement. He pulled up a chair next to Jasmine, waiting patiently while she finished eating. When she finally set down her fork, looking more satisfied than she had felt in years, he spoke seriously. "Jasmine, I want to talk to you about your future. But first, I need to understand your situation better. You said your grandmother passed away 2 years ago. What about your parents? Do you have any other family?" Jasmine's expression darkened slightly. "My mother left when I was a baby. I never knew my father. My grandmother raised me alone. When she died from cancer, there was no money for the apartment. Her sister was supposed to take me in, but she had too many problems of her own. She told me to go to foster care, but I was scared. I heard stories about foster homes, bad stories, so I ran away instead." Marcus listened carefully, his heart breaking for this child who had been failed by so many systems meant to protect her. "Where have you been staying these 2 years?" he asked gently. Jasmine shrugged. "Different places. Sometimes abandoned buildings, sometimes under bridges. In summer, the park. In winter, wherever I can find that's warm. Libraries during the day when I can clean up enough to not get kicked out." "Have you been going to school?" Marcus already knew the answer, but needed to hear it. Jasmine shook her head. "Not for 2 years. I was in 7th grade when everything happened. I tried to keep going at first, but without a stable place to live, without clean clothes, kids made fun of me. Teachers asked too many questions. I stopped going." Marcus made a decision in that moment. He couldn't walk away from this girl now. Her talent was undeniable, but more than that, she deserved a chance at a normal life. Every child deserved that. Jasmine, I want to help you. Not just with singing, but with everything. But to do that properly, we need to work within the system. I have contacts with social services, good people who actually care. Will you trust me to help you find a safe place to stay? Jasmine studied his face carefully. She had learned not to trust easily on the streets. People often made promises they didn't keep, but there was something genuine in Marcus's eyes. And he had already proven himself different by giving her a chance to perform. Slowly, she nodded. Okay, I'll trust you, but please don't send me somewhere bad. I'd rather be on the streets than somewhere I'll get hurt. I promise you, I will personally make sure you're safe, Marcus assured her firmly. He pulled out his phone and made several calls while Jasmine finished her meal. The first call was to his wife, Diane, explaining the situation. Diane, who worked as a child psychologist, immediately offered to help in any way possible. The second call was to a colleague who served on the board of a reputable youth shelter that focused on rehabilitating homeless teenagers. The third call was the most important. Marcus contacted Sarah Mitchell, a social worker he had worked with before when his music foundation sponsored programs for underprivileged youth. Sarah had a reputation for actually caring about the children in her care, fighting for their best interests even when it meant extra paperwork and headaches. She answered on the second ring. Sarah, it's Marcus Chen. I need your help with something urgent. He explained Jasmine's situation, her performance, and his desire to ensure she received proper care and support. Sarah asked several practical questions about Jasmine's age, health, and immediate needs. I can be there in 40 minutes, she said finally. Keep her safe until I arrive. Make sure she's fed and comfortable. While waiting for Sarah, Marcus arranged for Jasmine to watch the rest of the talent show from a comfortable seat near the stage instead of backstage. Betty sat with her, having completely abandoned her food stall for the evening. Other vendors had volunteered to cover for her, moved by Jasmine's story. As they watched other performers, Betty told Jasmine stories about her own childhood, how she had also faced hardships but found her way through with determination and the help of kind people. The talent show continued, but everyone kept talking about Jasmine's performance. The other acts, though talented, seemed to pale in comparison to the emotional impact of the street girl who sang for a meal. When the judges' deliberation time came, Marcus excused himself briefly to confer with his fellow judges, both of whom agreed that Jasmine's performance was the standout of the evening. However, there was a complication. The competition had rules and registration requirements that Jasmine hadn't met. Technically, she couldn't win any official prizes. But Marcus had an idea. He spoke with Mr. Patterson and the event sponsors about creating a special recognition award specifically for Jasmine, with a monetary prize that could be held in trust for her education and future development. The sponsors, moved by what they had witnessed and seeing an opportunity for positive publicity, agreed immediately. They offered a $5,000 scholarship fund for Jasmine's education and future. Additionally, several audience members had approached Mr. Patterson wanting to donate money directly to help her. He had collected over $3,000 in cash and pledges within 30 minutes. When Sarah Mitchell arrived, she found Jasmine surrounded by supporters. Sarah was a woman in her mid-40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. She had seen countless cases of neglected and abused children in her career. And while each one touched her heart, she had learned to maintain professional boundaries. But when Marcus introduced her to Jasmine and explained what had happened that evening, even Sarah felt her professional composure waver. Hello, Jasmine. I'm Sarah. Marcus called me because I help young people in situations like yours. I want to make sure you have a safe place to sleep tonight and that we figure out the best path forward for you. Is that okay? Jasmine nodded, though nervousness flickered across her face. Sarah noticed immediately. I know you're scared. That's completely normal. But I promise you, I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you. Sarah conducted a brief interview with Jasmine, asking about her health, any medical needs, and confirming the details of her situation. She made notes on her tablet while Marcus and Betty listened. Jasmine mentioned that she had a persistent cough and hadn't seen a doctor in over a year. Sarah immediately added medical evaluation to her list of priorities. For tonight, I'm going to place you in a temporary emergency shelter that I trust completely. It's a small facility run by a woman named Mrs. Robinson. She's like a grandmother to all the kids there, and she'll take good care of you. Tomorrow, we'll start working on a more permanent solution, getting you enrolled in school and making sure you have everything you need. Does that sound acceptable? Jasmine looked at Marcus, who nodded encouragingly. Sarah is one of the good ones. I wouldn't let you go with her if I didn't trust her completely. Jasmine agreed, relief washing over her at the thought of sleeping in an actual bed with a roof over her head. It had been so long since she felt truly safe at night. Before they left, the talent show concluded with the award ceremony. Sandra called all the finalists to the stage, and then Marcus took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we witnessed something extraordinary. While we have our official competition winners, whom we'll announce shortly, the organizing committee and I want to recognize someone who reminded us all why we gather for events like this. The crowd began applauding before he even said Jasmine's name, knowing who he meant. Jasmine Williams, would you please come back to the stage? Jasmine walked up slowly, still not fully believing this was happening. Marcus continued, Jasmine's courage in asking for a chance, and her incredible talent, have moved us all deeply. Therefore, we're creating a special award tonight, the Courage and Hope Award, which comes with a $5,000 scholarship fund for her education. The applause was thunderous. But Marcus wasn't finished. Additionally, members of our community have donated over $3,000 tonight to support Jasmine's immediate needs. This money will be managed by social services to ensure it's used for her benefit. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she accepted a certificate and a large ceremonial check for the photographs. Betty rushed onto the stage and hugged Jasmine again, crying happy tears. Several other community members joined them on stage, wanting to be part of this special moment. The local news reporter captured everything, knowing this story would resonate far beyond their small community. As cameras flashed and people celebrated, Jasmine felt something she hadn't felt in 2 years: hope. After the ceremony concluded and the crowd began to disperse, Sarah prepared to take Jasmine to the emergency shelter. Marcus exchanged contact information with Sarah, making her promise to keep him updated on Jasmine's progress. I mean it, Sarah. I want to be involved in helping this young lady. Whatever she needs, education, music lessons, support, I want to help provide it. Diana, Marcus's wife, had arrived by then after finishing her evening appointments. She brought a bag of essential items, toiletries, clean clothes, in approximately Jasmine's size, and a new pair of shoes. Every girl should have these basics, Diana said warmly, handing the bag to Jasmine. And tomorrow, we'll make sure you have everything else you need. Jasmine hugged the bag to her chest, overwhelmed by the kindness of strangers who had suddenly become angels in her life. The ride to Mrs. Robinson's emergency shelter took about 20 minutes through Atlanta's quieter streets. Jasmine sat in the back of Sarah's car, clutching the bag of essentials Diana had given her. Sarah played soft music on the radio and made gentle conversation, trying to help Jasmine relax. Mrs. Robinson has been running her shelter for 15 years. She only takes in 5 kids at a time because she believes in giving each child personal attention. Right now, she has 3 other teenagers staying with her. When they arrived, the shelter looked like an ordinary house in a modest neighborhood. Warm light glowed from the windows, and a well-maintained garden grew in the front yard. This surprised Jasmine, who had expected something institutional and cold. Sarah noticed her expression and smiled. Not what you expected, right? Mrs. Robinson believes home should feel like home, not an institution. The front door opened before they reached it. Mrs. Robinson stood there. A woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in a bun and a smile that reached her eyes. She wore comfortable clothes and an apron that suggested she had been cooking. You must be Jasmine, she said warmly. Sarah called ahead and told me about your amazing performance tonight. Come in, sweetheart. You're safe here. Inside, the house smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. The living room was cozy with comfortable furniture, bookshelves filled with books, and photos of smiling children covering one wall. Previous residents who had moved on to better situations. Mrs. Robinson led Jasmine to a small but clean bedroom on the second floor. It had a single bed with fresh sheets, a dresser, a desk, and curtains on the window. This will be your room while you're here. The bathroom is right across the hall. There are fresh towels in there, and you can take a hot shower whenever you're ready. Breakfast is at 7:30, lunch at noon, and dinner at 6. If you're hungry between meals, the kitchen is always open. We have house rules posted on the refrigerator, but the main ones are simple. Treat everyone with respect, no violence, no drugs, and contribute to household chores. Jasmine nodded, taking in every detail of the room. A real bed with soft pillows, clean walls, a window with actual glass and a lock. Safety. Mrs. Robinson must have seen the emotion on her face, because she gently touched Jasmine's shoulder. It's okay to cry, honey. You've been through a lot. But you're going to be okay now. We're going to make sure of it. After Sarah left with promises to return the next day, Mrs. Robinson showed Jasmine around the rest of the house. 3 other teenagers were in the common area watching television. Mrs. Robinson introduced them. Marcus, a 16-year-old boy who had been in foster care most of his life. Keisha, a 15-year-old girl whose mother was in jail. And David, a 17-year-old who had aged out of foster care and was finishing high school while living here. They all greeted Jasmine kindly, with no judgment about her appearance or circumstances. Keisha even offered to show her where everything was in the bathroom and gave her some of her own hair products to use. We've all been where you are, Keisha said quietly. It gets better. Mrs. Robinson really cares and she'll fight for you. Jasmine took a long hot shower that night, washing away not just dirt, but months of accumulated exhaustion and fear. She stood under the water until it ran clear, then washed her hair 3 times with the shampoo Keisha had shared. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a clean towel, she looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the girl staring back. Her eyes looked different, less haunted, more hopeful. She put on the clean pajamas Diana had packed and climbed into bed. The sheets felt like heaven against her clean skin. The pillow was soft, and the blanket was warm. For the first time in 2 years, Jasmine didn't have to sleep with one eye open, worried about her safety. She fell asleep within minutes, sleeping more deeply than she had since her grandmother's death. The next morning, Jasmine woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the smell of breakfast cooking. For a confused moment, she thought she was back at her grandmother's apartment. That the last 2 years had been a terrible dream. Then reality settled in, but it wasn't the harsh reality she had known. It was a new reality, one filled with possibility. At breakfast, Mrs. Robinson made pancakes, eggs, bacon, and fresh fruit. The teenagers ate together at a large dining table, chatting about their plans for the day. Marcus was going to his part-time job at a grocery store. Keisha had a tutoring session for math. David was visiting a college campus he hoped to attend next year. They included Jasmine in their conversation, naturally, asking about her singing and the talent show. Sarah Mitchell arrived at 9 o'clock with a folder full of documents. She sat with Jasmine and Mrs. Robinson at the kitchen table to discuss the plan moving forward. First, we need to get you to a doctor for a full checkup. I've made an appointment for this afternoon. Second, we need to enroll you back in school. You mentioned you were in 7th grade when you stopped, so you should technically be starting 9th grade now, but we'll need to assess where you are academically. Jasmine felt anxiety rise. School had been a source of pain before, but Sarah seemed to read her mind. We're going to find the right placement for you. There are programs designed specifically for students who have had interrupted educations. You won't be thrown into a regular classroom without support. Mrs. Robinson added, and I'll make sure you have everything you need, supplies, clothes, lunch money, all of it. The doctor's appointment that afternoon revealed what Sarah had suspected. Jasmine was underweight, mildly anemic, and had bronchitis from sleeping in cold, damp places. She also had some dental issues that needed attention. The doctor prescribed antibiotics for the bronchitis, vitamins for the anemia, and referred her to a dentist. He spoke kindly to Jasmine, explaining everything in terms she could understand, and praising her resilience. That evening, Marcus Chen called Sarah for an update. When he heard about Jasmine's medical needs, he immediately offered to cover any costs not handled by insurance or social services. "I also want to talk about her musical education," he said. "That talent can't be wasted. I have a colleague who runs a youth music program. They provide free lessons and mentoring to talented kids from difficult backgrounds. I'd like to get Jasmine enrolled." Sarah appreciated Marcus's generosity, but also wanted to ensure they didn't overwhelm Jasmine. "Let's get her stabilized first. Health, housing, school. Then we can add music lessons. She needs to adjust to having a normal routine before we pile too much on." Marcus agreed, though his enthusiasm was hard to contain. He had already mentioned Jasmine to several colleagues in the music industry, and interest was growing. Meanwhile, the video of Jasmine's performance had been posted online by the local news station. It went viral almost overnight. By the end of the week, it had millions of views across various social media platforms. Comments poured in from around the world, people moved by her story, impressed by her talent, and wanting to help. The news station received hundreds of emails asking how people could support her. The viral video brought both opportunities and challenges. Sarah's office was flooded with calls from people wanting to help, donate money, or offer services. While the generosity was touching, it also created complications. Some people had genuine intentions, while others saw an opportunity for publicity or profit. Sarah had to carefully vet every offer to protect Jasmine's interests. A major development came when a prominent talent agency in Los Angeles reached out through Marcus. They wanted to represent Jasmine, offering her opportunities for professional recordings and performances. Marcus was thrilled but cautious. He scheduled a video call with Sarah, Mrs. Robinson, and Jasmine to discuss it together. "This could be huge for her future," he explained. "But we need to do it right. She's still a minor, and her education and well-being come first." Jasmine sat quietly during the discussion, overwhelmed by how much her life had changed in just 2 weeks. She was now sleeping in a real bed, eating regular meals, attending school again, and taking medicine that was making her feel healthier every day. The persistent cough was finally subsiding. Her clothes were clean, and she had new shoes that fit properly, and now adults were talking about her as if she might become a professional singer. Mrs. Robinson, who had become quite protective of Jasmine, asked the hard questions. "What about school? She needs to finish her education. She's already behind, and we can't let music opportunities interfere with that." Diana Chen, who had joined the video call, agreed. "As a child psychologist, I've seen too many child performers who had their childhoods stolen. If we do this, we need clear boundaries and protections in place." They developed a plan together. Jasmine would focus primarily on school and adjusting to stable housing. On weekends, she could work with a vocal coach that Marcus would provide. During summer breaks, they could explore more intensive music opportunities. Any money she earned would be placed in a trust fund managed by a court-appointed guardian ad litem, accessible only for her education and approved expenses until she turned 18. Sarah petitioned the court to become Jasmine's temporary legal guardian until a permanent solution could be found. Given the circumstances and Sarah's excellent reputation, the judge approved quickly. This gave Sarah legal authority to make decisions on Jasmine's behalf and protect her interests. They also began searching for potential adoptive or foster families who could provide long-term stability. Meanwhile, Jasmine started 9th grade at a specialized school that worked with students who had interrupted educations. The teachers there were patient and skilled at helping students catch up. Jasmine was nervous the first day, remembering how cruel kids had been when she was homeless. But this school was different. Many students came from difficult backgrounds and understood struggle. She made her first real friend in weeks when she sat next to a girl named Maya in English class. Maya had spent time in foster care after her parents' rights were terminated. When Maya learned about Jasmine's singing talent and saw the viral video, she was impressed, but treated Jasmine normally. "That's cool that you can sing," Maya said simply. I can't carry a tune in a bucket. But I'm really good at math if you ever need help. Academic assessments showed that Jasmine was actually quite intelligent. Despite missing 2 years of formal education, she tested well in reading and showed particular strength in creative writing. Math was her weakest subject, but teachers believed she could catch up with proper support and tutoring. The school assigned her a mentor, a retired teacher named Ms. Williams who volunteered to help struggling students. Ms. Williams met with Jasmine twice a week after school. She was patient and encouraging, never making Jasmine feel stupid for not knowing things. You're not behind. You're exactly where you're supposed to be, given what you've been through, Ms. Williams would say. The fact that you survived what you did and still have the desire to learn, that shows incredible strength. At Mrs. Robinson's house, life developed a comfortable routine. Jasmine had morning chores like everyone else. She was responsible for setting the breakfast table and loading the dishwasher afterward. She attended school, came home to do homework, ate dinner with the household, and had free time in the evenings. Mrs. Robinson was strict about bed, even for the older teens, believing adequate sleep was crucial for growing minds and bodies. The vocal coach Marcus arranged was a woman named Professor Janet Williams, who taught at a local music conservatory. She came to Mrs. Robinson's house on Saturday mornings for lessons, bringing along sheet music and exercises. Professor Williams was amazed by Jasmine's raw talent, but also recognized she needed technical training to protect her voice and expand her range. You have a gift that many people spend their whole lives trying to develop, Professor Williams told Jasmine during their first lesson, but gifts need nurturing and training. Right now, you sing from pure emotion and instinct, which is beautiful. I'm going to teach you technique so you can sing even more beautifully without damaging your voice. She explained breathing techniques, proper posture, and vocal exercises that would strengthen Jasmine's voice. Jasmine absorbed everything eagerly. Music had always been her escape, her comfort, and her connection to her grandmother. Now it was becoming something more, a potential future, a career, a purpose. During one lesson, she asked Professor Williams, "Do you think I could really be a professional singer someday?" Professor Williams looked at her seriously. "Yes, I do. You have the talent, and now you're getting the training and support. But, more importantly, you have something many technically skilled singers lack. The ability to make people feel something when you sing. That's not teachable. You either have it or you don't, and you have it in abundance." Those words stayed with Jasmine, fueling her determination to work hard and prove everyone's faith in her was justified. The attention from the viral video gradually decreased, which Sarah and Marcus both considered a good thing. Jasmine needed time to adjust to normal life without constant media scrutiny. However, the impact of that video continued. The scholarship fund grew to over $15,000 with donations from strangers across the country who had been moved by her story. Local businesses offered support in various forms. A clothing store donated a complete wardrobe. A dentist provided free dental work, and a bookstore gave her a gift certificate for school supplies. One evening, about 6 weeks after the talent show, Mrs. Robinson received a call from Sarah with exciting news. A couple in their 40s, James and Carol Peterson, had expressed interest in fostering Jasmine with the possibility of adoption. They were African American professionals who had struggled with infertility and had always wanted children. After seeing Jasmine's story, they felt called to help. "They've been through all the background checks and home studies," Sarah explained when she came to discuss it with Jasmine. "They live in a good neighborhood with excellent schools. James is an engineer, and Carol is a nurse. They have no other children, so Jasmine would get their full attention. They're not looking to exploit her singing talent. They genuinely want to provide a loving home. Would you be willing to meet them?" Jasmine felt scared and hopeful simultaneously. Mrs. Robinson's shelter was comfortable, but it was temporary. The other teens who lived there would eventually move on, and she would need to as well. The possibility of a real family, permanent parents who chose her, was almost too much to hope for. But she had learned to hope again over these past weeks. "Yes," she said quietly. "I'll meet them." The meeting was arranged for a Saturday afternoon at a neutral location. a family-friendly restaurant where they could talk comfortably. Sarah accompanied Jasmine, providing support and observing the interaction. When James and Carol Peterson walked in, Jasmine noticed immediately how nervous they looked, almost as nervous as she felt. That somehow made her relax a little. They were just people, hoping for connection, just like her. Carol had kind eyes and a warm smile. James was tall, with a gentle demeanor. They sat down, and, after some initial awkward small talk, began sharing their story honestly. "We tried for years to have children," Carol explained softly. "After multiple miscarriages and failed fertility treatments, we finally accepted that biology wasn't going to work for us. We started looking into adoption and fostering because we have so much love to give, and we knew there were children out there who needed it." James continued, "When we saw your performance online and learned about your situation, something just clicked for both of us. We felt like maybe this was meant to be. We're not trying to replace your grandmother, no one could ever do that. But we want to offer you a home, stability, and support to help you build the future you deserve." His sincerity was evident in his voice. They asked Jasmine about her interests beyond singing. She told them about her growing love for reading, her struggles with math, and her dream of one day writing songs in addition to performing them. They listened attentively, asking follow-up questions that showed genuine interest. Carol mentioned that she loved to cook and asked what Jasmine's favorite foods were. James talked about his hobby of building furniture and offered to build Jasmine a custom bookshelf if she came to live with them. The conversation flowed more naturally than anyone expected. They talked about expectations, house rules, and how they would support Jasmine's education and musical training. The Petersons made it clear they had no intention of pushing her into a music career if that wasn't what she wanted. "Your well-being comes first," Carol emphasized. "Everything else is secondary." After 2 hours, Sarah suggested they end the meeting to let everyone process. The Petersons asked if they could see Jasmine again the following week, maybe do something fun together. Jasmine agreed, and they planned an outing to the Atlanta Botanical Garden, a place James and Carol loved and wanted to share with her. As they said goodbye, Carol impulsively hugged Jasmine, then immediately pulled back, worried she had overstepped. But Jasmine hugged her back, surprising herself with how natural it felt. Over the next several weeks, Jasmine spent increasing amounts of time with the Pete. They visited the botanical garden, went to movies, attended one of Jasmine's school performances, and had dinners together. Each visit reinforced that this could work. The Petersons were patient, understanding, and committed to helping Jasmine heal from her trauma while building a new life. 3 months after the talent show, the paperwork was completed for Jasmine to move in with the Petersons as a foster child. The plan was to foster for at least a year before pursuing adoption, allowing everyone time to adjust and ensure it was the right fit. Moving day was emotional. Mrs. Robinson cried as she hugged Jasmine goodbye, making her promise to visit often. The other teens in the shelter gave her small gifts and words of encouragement. The Petersons' home was beautiful but welcoming. Jasmine's new room had been decorated thoughtfully, not too childish, but comfortable and personalized with things Carol and James had learned she liked. The promised custom bookshelf stood against one wall, already filled with books they thought she might enjoy. A small desk by the window provided a perfect study space, and on the dresser was a framed photo of Jasmine with her grandmother that Sarah had somehow tracked down from old records. That night at dinner, their first as a family, James said grace. He thanked God for bringing them together and asked for blessings on their new journey. Carol had made Jasmine's favorite meal, baked chicken with macaroni and cheese. As they ate, Jasmine felt a peace she hadn't experienced since before her grandmother's death. This felt like home, or at least like it could become home with time. School continued going well. Jasmine's grades improved steadily with consistent support and tutoring. She joined the school choir, where her talent quickly became apparent. The choir director gave her solo parts in their winter concert. When the Petersons attended, Carol cried, watching Jasmine perform, proud tears this time, rather than sad ones. James recorded the whole thing on his phone to share with relatives who lived far away. Marcus Chen remained involved, checking in monthly on Jasmine's progress. He attended some of her vocal lessons with Professor Williams, discussing her development and future opportunities, but true to everyone's agreement, they took things slowly. There was no rush to thrust her into professional performances or recording studios. The foundation was being built carefully: education, stability, emotional healing, and technical training. The talent agency that had expressed interest remained patient, willing to wait until Jasmine was older and more prepared. Marcus negotiated terms that would be favorable when the time came, ensuring she would have protection and support. "You're going to be a star," he told Jasmine during one of their conversations. "But there's no rush. Stars that burn slowly and steadily shine the longest." By the time Jasmine's 15th birthday arrived, her transformation was complete in many ways but just beginning in others. She had gained healthy weight, her cough was completely gone, and her smile came easily now. She had friends at school, a stable home, parents who loved her, and a future full of possibilities. The Petersons threw her a small birthday party, inviting some school friends: Sarah, Mrs. Robinson, Marcus and Diana, Professor Williams, and Betty from the food stall. Betty arrived with a huge cake and tears in her eyes, hugging Jasmine tightly. "Look at you, baby. Just look at you. I knew that night at the talent show that you were special, but this exceeds even my hopes." Marcus gave her a gift certificate to a music store, along with a journal where she could write song lyrics. The Petersons' gift was the best legal papers, showing they had initiated adoption proceedings. "We'd like to make this permanent," James said, his voice thick with emotion. "If you want that too, we want you to be our daughter, officially and forever." Jasmine could barely speak through her tears. She nodded vigorously, then managed to choke out, "Yes. Yes, I want that. I want to be your daughter." Carol and James embraced her, the three of them crying together, while everyone else in the room applauded. Sarah watched the scene with professional satisfaction and personal joy. This was why she did her job. For moments like these, when broken systems managed to work correctly and a child found their way home, she thought about how easily things could have gone differently if Marcus hadn't given Jasmine a chance. If Betty hadn't shown kindness, if the right people hadn't stepped forward at the right time. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and the house was quiet, Jasmine sat in her room, writing in her new journal. She wrote about her grandmother, thanking her for teaching her to sing and never giving up on her. She wrote about the dark times on the streets and how scared she had been. Then she wrote about the talent show, the question she had asked that changed everything, and all the people who had helped her since then. She ended her entry with a poem that later became the lyrics to her first original song. "I sang for bread, but found a home I sang from pain, now I'm not alone, one voice. One chance, one moment in time, changed everything. This life is mine." She read it back to herself, smiled, and felt her grandmother's presence somehow, proud and at peace. Professor Williams had been right. Jasmine did become a professional singer eventually, but not immediately. She finished high school with honors, earned a scholarship to a prestigious music conservatory, and graduated with a degree in vocal performance and music composition. Her first album, released when she was 22, was dedicated to her grandmother and the Petersons, who had officially adopted her when she was 16. The album's title was Bread and Hope, and its lead single was the story of that night at the talent show. The music video showed a young actress portraying Jasmine, asking for food in exchange for singing. Then cut to real footage from that actual performance. It became an international hit. Not just because of the music, but because of the message, that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for help. And sometimes a single chance is all someone needs to change their life. Jasmine never forgot where she came from. As her career flourished, she established a foundation called One Chance that provided support for homeless youth with artistic talents. The foundation offered scholarships, housing assistance, and mentorship programs. Betty served on the board of directors. Marcus Chen helped with industry connections. Sarah Mitchell advised on the social services aspect. And every year, they held a talent show where any child, regardless of circumstances, could perform. Looking back years later, Jasmine often reflected on that pivotal evening. If she hadn't gathered the courage to approach the food stall, if she hadn't asked that bold question, her life might have ended very differently. She might have remained on the streets, another statistic, another forgotten child. Instead, she had sung for her supper and found a family, a future, and a purpose that extended far beyond herself. The lesson she shared in interviews and speaking engagements was simple but powerful. Never be afraid to ask for a chance. Yes, people might say no. They might judge you or dismiss you. But some people will say yes. Some people are waiting for someone to help. They just need to know you exist. That night, I asked for food and received a family. I asked for one chance and received a lifetime of chances. All because I was brave enough to ask the question, if I sing well, will you give me a plate of food? And that question, spoken by a desperate street girl on a warm Atlanta evening, had indeed changed everything.